Welcome. Good morning. My name is Alicia Potgieter. I am the owner of Biolink Attention Training in Port Elizabeth. We are situated in Sunridge Park as of the second term, whenever it may start. And I have a passion for children and adults who struggle with attention issues. So we specialize in that through neurocognitive training. But similar as today, we also do workshops and teacher trainings for teachers and parents, just to give a little bit more information about what's going on and what we can do to help. What you can expect from today's session, we'll leave here knowing what are children capable of learning at the various stages of their development? How do the children develop their intellectual skills to react and interact with their environment? How do these cognitive abilities develop? And then in what order as well? And then how do these cognitive skills actually influence learning ability? All right. So if you had to look at the following slide, this is the 4 cognitive stages of childhood development according to Jean Piaget. He was a French psychologist who specialized in the development of children. And he actually then set this development into the 4 stages. And he started by saying that the sensory motor would be children between the ages of 0 and 2. That's when they really start interacting and learning through their senses, learning about their environment through their senses, but also by manipulating objects, so touching them, seeing it, figuring out what's going on. When they go to the ages of 2 to 7, we're looking at the pre-operational phase. This is where they start developing their memory, imagination. They start understanding symbolism. They start grasping concepts like the past and the future, when my birthday is coming, or that time we went on holiday. When they reach 7 to 11, they start functioning in the concrete operational phase or stage. This is where they start really interacting with external events, not only their little world. They start taking the feelings of others into consideration. So the little kids, it's my toy. I want to play with it. It's my thing. Where now, when they're between 7 and 11, they start thinking less about their own circumstances and more about those of their family and friends. They also understand that not everyone shares their thoughts and beliefs, their feelings. Just because I'm frustrated doesn't mean mom has to be frustrated as well, even though that's what normally happens. Then if we look at the ages of 11 and up, we start looking at the formal operational stage. And this is where they start using their logic to solve problems and really developing a view about what they feel about the world around them. And they can start planning for the future. Now, why is it important to really look at these different kind of phases? Because we want to be able to see when or what kind of skills starting to develop, so that if there's a delay, we can intervene. If we then look at then what exactly are cognitive skills, those of you who were on the webinar yesterday as well, you'll see that there will be some information that's overlapping, but I promise that there's information that's new, but the way that we address the problem stays the same. So what are the cognitive skills? There's going to be those core skills the brain uses to think, to learn, to read, to remember, to pay attention, to solve problems. Again, important to note that they all work together. It's an integrated system because they want to take in information from the environment. They process that information and then they move it into one general bank of knowledge that is then used for just working and living in everyday life, school, work, and at home. To give a little bit more of a visual understanding of what on earth I'm talking about, if you look here at the top section, you're going to see those are my cognitive skills. So if I'm looking at the cognitive skills, the everyday cognitive skills, I'm going to be looking at things like learning, reading, thinking. So if I then go to, for example, something like remembering, I cannot remember if I don't know how to use my long-term, my short-term, my spatial, and my working memories. So even though these are my cognitive skills, there are certain mechanisms that support these skills, that help these skills actually come to life. Another one that I can use is that, for example, we can't read if I don't know how to process what I hear, to discriminate between what information is relevant and what's not, to move my eye from side to side while reading without losing my concentration or focus, to process the letters that I'm seeing, to actually remember the information long enough to be able to understand how the paragraphs relate to each other or what happened in the previous chapter, and to sustain my attention long enough to actually finish the book. So while I have my cognitive skills at the top, it's going to be these mechanisms, these executive functions that really support me in developing those cognitive skills. If we're going to delve into the cognitive skills a little bit more, I'm going to specially focus on memory, on attention, and on processing. Those are my main cognitive skills that I'd really like to just show you a little bit more about what do they really mean, and then what is the influence of them going to be then on, for example, my learning skills. So the first one that I want to look at is going to be my long-term memory. Long-term memory, it's when I recall that information stored in the past. If there are problems with my long-term memory, that's when I start noticing things like I'm forgetting names, I'm doing poorly on tests, I'm forgetting things that I used to know. So this is the first one where I go and I say, this is why cognitive skill development is not only for children, it's for adults as well. In the different stages of life, it's important to always keep on developing those cognitive skills. Short-term memory, then again, refers to the information that I'm processing right now, whether it's visual or auditory, and I need to hold that information just long enough so that I can be able to recall it. If problems with short-term memory is creeping into everyday life, I'm going to have a difficulty remembering names of people that I was just introduced to, or birthdays, items on a list. The one that is often overlooked, or the one that people don't really know about, is going to be my working memory. Now, what is the working memory? It's a memory that I retain just long enough so that I can manipulate or use the information that I've just received. All right? So it enables you to hang onto that information while it's still processing. If I can't do that, I have to reread my instructions because I can't remember what was said long enough to actually understand what is expected of me. Another thing is when I have multi-step directions or multi-level instructions. First do this, then do this, then do, I can't do it. So if you're sending your child to the kitchen and say, please switch on the kettle and go get a bottle of water from the fridge, while you're there, won't you just bring my cell phone? And they only come back with the cell phone, or they only switched on the kettle. Then we also have a problem with that working memory because it has such a close link to how I process my information. The next one I want to look at is attention. There are various aspects of attention and again that I want to look at. First, sustained attention, selective attention. So if we look at the first one, sustained attention, what is that all about? It's that when I need to stay focused for a period of time, especially when the work is repetitive or mundane or boring. Common problems is I don't want to do my homework because it's boring. I have no interest in doing it. So there's going to be lots of unfinished projects. A little craft project that was started, a little homework that was started, a little playing of toys that was started, and nothing gets done. Or again, I'm jumping from task to task because I can't sustain my attention long enough to finish or to focus on the task at hand. Then, if selective attention is a problem, selective attention refers to being able to stay focused on a task despite there being distractions. So I'm working, but the TV is playing in the background. It's important for me to select that I'm paying attention to this task. If they can't do that, they'll be easily distracted, especially in the classroom environment. Even if the classroom is quiet, there's still going to be someone sneezing, someone talking, someone borrowing a pencil, a teacher walking in to get a worksheet, whatever the case may be. So selective attention is going to be very important. And then, of course, divided attention. This is when you are able to work on one task while you also complete something else. It is not necessarily recommended, but if you have problems with your divided attention, then this is going to be, you're going to have a lot of difficulty with multitasking, or you'll make frequent mistakes because you have to go back and check yourself all the time. Your divided attention isn't very strong. If we then look at the third one that I just want to zoom in on a little bit, that's going to be our processing. Either auditory, what I hear, visual, what I see, or the speed, how quickly I can do it. So when does auditory processing really come into play? Auditory processing allows you to analyze and to blend and to segment sounds together into something that makes sense. All right. So if the child is reading, but they're reading phonetically and they can't put those phonemes together, they won't understand. Or you'll find children who are reading word for word for word, but they're not being able to put what they hear together with a meaning. So auditory processing doesn't mean that your child has, or that you have hearing problems. It's more that the brain is struggling to process or to attach a meaning to what it is hearing. All right, so common problems that you're going to find when you have auditory processing issues: learning to read, incredibly difficult because they can't differentiate between the phonics. Reading is a problem because they don't understand how the words in the sentence work together. And then also reading comprehension, because if a child can't read, you can't understand what is on the page. All right, that's going to have a big influence on especially academic performance. Then the second one I want to look at is visual processing. What does visual processing mean? This is, again, being able to take an image and to attach the correct meaning to that image. All right, so it enables you to think in pictures. First one, if you have a problem with this, you're going to have difficulty understanding what you just read, especially if you have problems, like we've mentioned before, identifying the difference between a P, a D, and a B. It's just a circle with a line. If I can't process exactly what I'm seeing, I'm having difficulties with reading. Or remembering what you just read, because you're still processing what you're seeing. Following directions, very difficult, especially if you're using a map, because you can't put the picture in the same context as what you're seeing around you, and that becomes a problem. And then doing something like a maths word problem, where you now have to visualize something, becomes very difficult for children who have visual processing issues. Again, this is often mistaken for a child with sight problems, but an optometrist will easily be able to tell you, listen, your child is struggling in class, there is issues, but I've tested the child and there is nothing wrong with the actual eyes. Their seeing is fine. It's the problem where the brain tries to link the image to a meaning that is the problem. And that's when you have to start addressing then the visual processing issues. And then processing speed, the third one, that is going to allow you to respond to a stimuli in your environment quickly and accurately. So you want to perform that task quickly. Common problems is if children or adults have problems with the processing speed, then the tasks become more difficult because it's taking a longer time to understand. If I'm, for example, talking about fractions and the teacher says, all right, this is a very easy, very simple example. This is the denominator, this is the numerator, whatever way it goes around. And then, all right, the kid goes, okay, numerator. All right, I can get this, the numerator and the right. And then when he looks up at the screen, the teacher goes, and that's how you add them together. And the child goes, what did I just miss? Because while you were talking about the denominators having to be the same, that child is still figuring out which one is which. So it becomes very difficult for them to complete tasks. They're normally the last one to finish. But this also, that processing speed causes a lot of issues with mathematical ability and with language ability, because they take so long to process what actually is being said or what is expected of them. All right, so again, just summarizing that, to be able to read, a common cognitive skill used every single day, not only in school, you're going to need your auditory processing, discriminatory processing, visual tracking, visual processing, working memory, your short-term memory that's linked to that, as well as your long-term memory, what the story was about when I'm doing a comprehension test or I'm writing a test in a couple of weeks, and then sustained attention. All of that has an influence on the ability to, for example, read. If a child can't read, he can't do comprehension tests. But it's not that only his English will be bad or his Afrikaans will be bad. A child that has difficulty with reading will also not be able to, in later years, do NS or SS or EMS, because all of these things have instructions, information that needs to be read. And if reading comprehension is low, it could be because of either one or a combination of these cognitive skills that are not up to speed. So why are these cognitive skills crucial? Because they work together. I can't just say, oh, I'm awesome in this one thing because my working memory is great. If you have perfect working memory, but you have a lot of difficulty recalling things from your long-term memory, for example, you're going to still have an academic issue. They really do work together. The second thing is that everyone has different cognitive strengths. So my memory can be awesome, but I can be married to someone who is really good at logic and problem solving. So the problem is that we can have different strengths, meaning also that we can have different difficulties. If one of these skills are weak, like we said, grasping, retaining, and using that information becomes incredibly difficult because they all work together, which means most learning struggles are caused by either one or a combination of weak cognitive skills. But I have good news. These cognitive skills are these profiles, these cognitive profiles, they're not set in stone. This is as a result of, it's a term or an idea that's called neuroplasticity, right? Like plastic can be molded and shaped, the same with your brain, neuroplasticity. So it refers to the brain's ability to change continuously throughout an individual's life, and talks about the formation and the reorganization of those synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experiences or recovery after an accident, for example. So after brain damage, the ability for the brain to recuperate itself. Think of a person who broke their neck in an accident, and after that, they still have the ability to learn to walk, to learn to talk. The brain is constantly adapting. So in previous years, it was thought that a person is born with this brain capacity and this is what happens, and if you lose it, it's gone. But that has been proven to be false, because we can use and improve the brain constantly through neuroplasticity, which means that cognitive skills can be improved through practice and training. It doesn't have to be, my child has slow processing, that's the end of the world, there's nothing I can do, he will always struggle at school. No, they can be practiced and they can be trained. Right, so how does Biolink come into this? We actually offer a neurocognitive training program. It's called Play Attention. You'll see the little software that's going there at the top. And then we have this little monitor that actually measures 2 brainwaves in real time. Now, if you go to the top right corner, you'll see there's a little red line. Now, that red line shows me the child or the person that's on the machine at the moment is completely concentrating. They're in their beta mode. So not only can I see in real time if they're paying attention, but I can also give them activities to help them with the development of those cognitive skills. We start with a focus assessment. Now, what I love about this assessment, it is completely objective. There is no, this is my opinion, or I think your child is like this. It measures on a norm-based group the 4 constructs of concentration. So we're looking at consistency. Can the child sit still and finish a task, even when it's boring, repetitive, mundane, which is closely linked to that sustained attention. We test impulsivity, impulse control, inhibition. Are they constantly going, or can they wait their turn? Can they think before they respond? Very important in a classroom, for example. We look at distractions, how those auditory processing, visual processing, how the things in the environment is actually hindering their ability to concentrate. And also we look at performance, which is actually called brain processing speed. And this is where we look at how quickly and accurately the brain actually processes information. This focus assessment, 25-minute assessment, norm-based. Our norm group is more than 10,000 participants big, so I can give you a scientific, objective result. We also then have, after we've identified the strengths and the weaknesses in the cognitive skills, we then go to the neurocognitive training, where we have a selection of 12 programs, each one linked to a different cognitive skill or a different executive function. Okay, so for example, if you are looking at, here is attention stamina, visual tracking, short-term memory, discriminatory processing. Does that look familiar? Yes, because all of those activities were just on the iceberg that we were looking at, those cognitive skills. All right, so let's look at a case study. Let me give you an example. Let's say we have a 12-year-old boy. Let's call him John. All right. A subjective observation would be, so this would be something that the mom would see, the dad would see, the granny would see, the teacher would see. We have a child here that is a daydreamer. All right. He cannot keep up in class and he struggles with math and schoolwork. That is what I'm seeing. The kid is always daydreaming, not finishing his work, struggling in class. But if we look at an objective observation through the focus assessment, I can see that his consistency, for example, is in the norm, which means he can sit and finish tasks at hand, even if they're boring or repetitive. But his performance, that brain processing speed, that was way below the norm, which means he is processing slowly. And then also his visual and auditory distractions are above the norm, which means very distractible. What would this then mean in an everyday situation? This would mean that his processing skills, so his auditory processing, the visual processing, discriminatory processing, processing speed, they're all low, which impacts automatically math skills, language skills, reading, reasoning, sequencing for number patterns, for example. The processing is slow. If they're very young, this can also look like children who are struggling with handwriting that isn't very neat, or very poor spelling. That is all going to be processing speed. Memory is going to be affected because the working memory and the processing work so closely together. The working memory is affected, so is the short-term memory, which then hinders the ability to store the information effectively in the long-term memory. They're all so interlinked, which means he is unable to filter those distractions and stay on task, because we said that he cannot distinguish between which stimuli in the environment are relevant and which he should be blocking out. The teacher and the parents thought he was daydreaming. Really, he wasn't daydreaming. He was just incredibly distracted by his environment. That is something that we can pick up. And then also, all these weak cognitive skills make it obviously incredibly difficult to focus and to perform in a classroom situation. What we would do from there on, we would go back to our iceberg. All of those skills that we are seeing that he has difficulty with is going to influence the cognitive skills necessary for being successful in an academic environment. So we would choose specific activities, we choose 5 or 6 tailor-made to his specific needs. Now, what's amazing about the program that we use is that little armband that you saw that the child was wearing, that actually has an algorithm built in, which shows me not only if he's concentrating or not, but it stores the data of the child. After 7 sessions, it's stored enough data to be able to tell me, listen, how often is that child impulsive? What quality of attention are they paying? Like, what is the concentration percentage? How many times did they look away? All of these data are stored for all of those activities that they're doing. And that allows us to set goals, specific goals for that child, for that activity. Remember, we said I can be great at memory, but I can be horrible at paying attention. So what's amazing about this program is not only does it develop those skills, but it meets you at your level and it starts building you from there. So my goal for level 2 on attention stamina could be completely different to my goal on level 2 of short-term memory, depending on my ability. All right. So what is then the purpose of cognitive skill training? Firstly, it targets and it strengthens the weak cognitive skills. What's amazing about, again, the program that we're using is that there's constant and immediate real-time feedback. So I won't do an activity and afterwards I'll hear, listen, you didn't pay attention 37% of the time. I can see right now something is distracting that child. The facilitator can observe what's going on, correct the behavior, shape the behavior so that all of the concentration is then again completely focused on improving the cognitive skills. Then, because I have that real-time feedback, that child, through help of the facilitator later on his own, can self-regulate his concentration. All right? And mindfulness is achieved because they have such a strong link to that visual representation of what's going on the screen. Mindfulness, I'm here, I'm completely focused on what's here in the now so that I can completely focus all my resources on this task or on this moment. Another purpose is going to be that the customized program targets the individual's weak skills. We talked about that. And it also challenges the learner, but within reason. So here is the goal. Now you were impulsive 11 times. Let's see if you can now only be impulsive 9 times. The next time, 8 times, 6 times. So it's constantly going up. And then these weak skills, unfortunately, they don't just catch up with age. So long-term intervention with permanent results can be attained or achieved through neurocognitive training. So how does Biolink come into all of this? Again, we have that focus assessment. If you're interested in talking to us about it, we have reduced the price to 350 Rand for the duration of the lockdown. With all of the economic things going on outside, parents are having a hard time, but the small businesses still need to survive. So we are offering that if you are booking and paying for your assessment for the end of lockdown, we will then do the assessment, obviously, after lockdown. You will get the focus assessment with the feedback and the demonstration and the scientific report at a reduced price. If you're interested in that, you can contact me via WhatsApp. You do have my contact details, or you can send me an email on pe@biolink.co.za. All right, so what is this focus assessment going to do for you? What we've talked about today is scary. It's basically saying, listen, if this or this isn't right, there goes your child's academic career. And that's not the case. The case is that to measure is to know. So if I know that my child has an issue, let's identify where that issue lies. If a teacher is seeing a problem in the classroom, refer them. We can see, is it a cognitive skill issue? Is it a processing issue? Is it a distraction issue? And we can actually develop a program tailor-made for your child's needs, which means you get a scientific test and a report. We identify those problem areas for you. We offer support for the parents and the teachers, and we can give you practical strategies for school and home while we work in the long run to facilitate. Again, I want to really reiterate this, that it's not a quick fix. We're looking at a minimum of 40 to 60 hours because we want that practice and that training to become permanent eventually. If you're looking for a quick fix, this is not it. If you're looking for a permanent fix, come and talk to me. Then, ladies and gentlemen, again, to measure is to know. After that, if we see your child is fine, everything is in the norm, I'm going to say, enjoy your coffee, have a nice life, contact me for the next webinar. But if you don't measure, you don't know. Because you were here today, I'm going to send you a free ebook. It's on the role of cognitive skill development in academic performance. It also does have some games and activities that you can do with the younger ones that we did not necessarily touch on today. So you will be looking forward to getting that in your inbox very soon. And then I want to ask again, please, asking doesn't work, but bribing does. I will also send you a free checklist with some things to identify in your child if they do have a cognitive skill issue. So if you go onto Google or Facebook, please guys try to do the Google link as well. It will really help me in the long run, just to tell other people the value of what you got from today. I will send you this checklist as well, absolutely free of charge, by just reviewing us on Google or Facebook and sharing your experience, what you had while we were here. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you. Alicia Potgieter, my details are on the screen. You are welcome to contact me should you need more information. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.